Welcome to the Surfside PPC podcast. Go to surfsideppc.com to join Surfside PPC Premium and ask your questions. Thanks for listening, and please subscribe.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 8 of the Surfside PPC podcast. Today, I'm going to be going over Performance Max for lead generation, Performance Max for e-commerce, and basically the way that I look at creating Performance Max campaigns, asset groups, targeting, all of these different things, and whether or not it even works. So I'm going to be going over some of that. Every single podcast is now going to come with a bonus podcast that will be added to the premium section. So the bonus will be a video version of the podcast. Now it'll be a completely different recording because I can't kind of just use the audio for my video recordings because I kind of always saying, oh, look here. And I don't want to release a podcast where I'm referring to a screen that, clearly you can't see if it's just audio only. So will be 2 separate podcasts basically, but a video component to this where I actually go over, here are the actual things I'm talking about. So be a little bit more descriptive, and those will all go in the bonus section on a weekly basis. So having a lot more content come out, as the Google Ads course is available for $34.99 a year. If you're trying to learn Google Ads, may do a few more courses with like recurring type payment things. So if you're interested for a year, you're learning about it. If you have a business of that type, you can kind of keep up with everything. So I'm going to try to do a lot more of that. So let's get into today. And basically what I'm going to be going over is my strategies as far as Performance Max for lead generation. So questions are kind of just, kind of basic today. We'll still put them in there, but we're going to start with question number 1.
Do you use Performance Max for lead generation? Does it work to drive calls and leads for a business? What are some best practices to make it work and drive quality leads?
Okay, so question number 1, Performance Max for lead generation. Do you do it? Does it work? This is a really good question, and it's one of those things where it works, but it requires a lot of control, and it requires a lot of having the right settings, the right, conversion settings, the right data going into your actual account. I always talk about data, and it's really like the way Google Ads operates is if you can feed in like tons of sales and conversion and revenue data, then it just operates a whole lot better for you, from like a return on ad spend perspective. It's hard to do that from a lead generation standpoint because it's hard to perfectly connect leads to sales, and also like Google ad spend to sales all the time because there's people that may click on an ad at one point and end up converting later. So basically to start all of this, the more context you can give Google Ads about what's actually coming in from your advertisements and what's actually valuable to your business. So Performance Max for lead generation does work. It's just one of those, it requires a few controls. First thing is the conversion actions that you optimize for. If you optimize for the calls from ads conversion, you just need to keep in mind that Performance Max has the potential of driving you really low quality phone calls, competitive phone calls. So one of the things that you can do is say, we're going to make our calls from ads conversion be 90 seconds, 2 minutes. So we're not getting some of these just confused phone callers. That's one of the things that I do if I'm getting a ton of phone calls. For some clients, like phone call volume is just one of the things they deal with. And that's one of those where you really have to lean on the client and, what their kind of expectations are in terms of phone call quality. But if you're running like a medical office or even like a local service business at times, you might find that it's like, all right, we're getting a ton of competitive phone calls. And usually it just ties right back to Performance Max because Performance Max naturally goes after competitive keywords. So the other part of this is negative keywords. Like when you're running Performance Max for lead generation, you have to build a huge negative keyword list. It's like build an account level, like build a negative keyword list, share it among your search campaign, your Performance Max campaign. It's actually a really good strategy overall to run Performance Max and take all of these, like what broad match would essentially match, and add them as negative keywords. Find a bunch of 1-word negative keywords, and you can really kind of optimize your entire account with it. The other thing is Performance Max works really well if you're like, all right, we're going to send in a lead form. As long as the lead forms that are coming in on the website are quality, like if Performance Max says it drives 30 lead forms, and your client says, well, we got about 30 spam lead forms last month, it's probably, and something that they don't usually get, it's probably Performance Max. Now, vice versa, if you're getting good form leads, it can continue to drive good form leads. It's one of those things where it works when you feed in good conversion data. Once Performance Max drives good conversions, it generally continues to drive good conversions. So it's one of those where it does work pretty well. It's just you need to have the right conversion actions in place So the way that I usually set it up is I optimize it for mainly like the lead form that's coming in. The way Performance Maxes works the absolute best is with a qualified conversion action. This is why Performance Max, and we'll get into our next question, has always worked the best for e-commerce, because you can actually file in a purchase and you can say, we're optimizing for purchase conversions and revenue. So once Google Ads starts to get some of that purchase conversion and revenue data, then it's able to actually use that to its advantage. And, you're able to actually see context in terms of, oh, okay, this lead came in as a phone call. We counted that initial lead. That was a 2-minute and 45-second phone call. So that's the first thing that I want to track. Those phone calls that last that long. This is where actually CallRail can be a little bit better, because with CallRail, you can set some of these controls a little bit easier and you get more accurate call data in terms of some of the mobile calls that are coming in from your website. The mobile clicks to call conversion, if you follow me, you know what I'm talking about, but basically the conversion action that tracks the button click of a phone call button on your website. So very common conversion. Anything button clicks, outbound clicks, clicks in general, Performance Max just drives those conversions, but they're not real. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It's just one of those so the workaround is you could say, okay, mobile clicks to call when the session on your website lasts for longer than 60 seconds. That's kind of one workaround where, it can generally work a little better. The other thing is just saying, mobile clicks to call, 2-minute plus sessions. Then it really makes it more something that somebody has to be on your website for a little while. And generally, if somebody's calling from your website, they're going to open up, their phone app opens, the website stays open. So they'll be on your website for a session longer than that. So that's one of the workarounds. The other thing that you can do, so I always say desktop phone calls, basically call forwarding. So calls from ads, those conversions when they last 60 seconds or longer. And, one of the good things to do is put that threshold up a little bit higher for Performance Max. So you really just need to keep in mind, are the conversions being reported by Performance Max actually translated into leads and revenue? Now, switch to a Shopify website. This will bring us into our next question, but I switched to a Shopify website. But let's get into question number 2. So we'll put in question number 2. Basically, for question number 1, Performance Max for lead generation definitely works. As far as targeting goes, search themes kind of match my exact keywords that I'm targeting on the search network. Audience signals, I try to incorporate as many of my own your data audience signals. So my website, my YouTube channel, my customer lists, any of that information that I have are the things that I really want to focus on, because that's the information that you're feeding into Google, along with your conversion data that they're ultimately going to use to optimize your campaign. So audience data, search themes, and then when you're building out your assets, just use good ad copy, create good advertisements. That's really all you're trying to do. So that'll wrap up Performance Max for lead generation. Kind of a quick answer, but the video component will go into a little bit more detail about, overall strategy and things like that. Next is going to be Performance Max for e-commerce. So let's do question number 2.
Do you use Performance Max for e-commerce? How can I use it to increase my return on ad spend? Does it work well for an e-commerce business?
Okay, question number 2. And yeah, every question is read by some AI voice that I generate. So try to do different voices, but so you don't just get stuck with my voice for a whole episode. But basically for question number 2, Performance Max for lead generation. Performance Max for e-commerce, excuse me. That's kind of really where it first worked, is Performance Max. And that's kind of where I learned that it's ultimately just, you need to feed in revenue data you need to just feed in good conversion data into Performance Max to make it work. Now, there is a case to be made that Performance Max sometimes just causes you to spend a lot of money on your brand keywords and then drives conversions that way. That does happen in a lot of accounts, but it's also one of those things where that's kind of how Google Ads is now. Because if you are an e-commerce business and you search a brand name, you're going to see those ads, you're going to see competitive ads. So you really, from an e-commerce standpoint, like your brand, competitive brands, you really want to target it all, because there's no real downside in targeting your brand unless you're just like, okay, we're bringing in way too much, we're spending way too much on this. So that's one of those things where you always want to kind of take out that data and say, here is what our brand return on ad spend kind of looks like. And sometimes you might want to set up separate search campaign, shopping campaign, Performance Max campaign that are a little bit more on the branded side and incorporate more branded keywords and focus on a really high return on ad spend. And then non-branded campaigns can actually be used to kind of build more people into like your funnel, let's say. So that's kind of the thing I try to do. I look at the account level when it comes to e-commerce. Performance Max, though, those campaigns are, where I spend the majority of my budget when it comes to e-commerce. I still run standard shopping campaigns because you still see like the keywords in standard shopping campaigns. So I think having brand and non-brand in your Google Ads account, and obviously the more budget you have and, the more that you can spend and kind of, how you're budgeting things can definitely make a huge difference. So that's also the other thing that you want to keep in mind is where your budget is can also dictate your strategy. I think from a very simple standpoint, creating one Performance Max campaign, separating out asset groups the same way that you would ad groups. So if you have 5 different product categories, if you're selling, 5 different widgets, basically just 5 different types of products, for example. So let's say you sell a bicycle, a scooter, et cetera, et cetera. Basically an asset group for each of those things. A scooter asset group that targets scooter for sale keywords. Obviously, the more similar to the type of scooter you're selling, if it's a $200 scooter versus a $2,000 scooter, depending on the, electric versus manual. But ultimately what you're trying to do is you're building asset groups to say, this asset group, I want to go after this specific customer. I am going to incorporate some of my brand data within my Performance Max campaign. And that brand data is going to basically figure out the funnel to my conversion. So I say somebody might start with, what is the best scooter for under, $2,000? Oh, well, you guys have a $1,500 scooter. Here's all the benefits. So it may start with a click, research, watching videos, going through like all of your business data. I mean, I always think about before somebody contacts Surfside PPC, I don't think it's like they watch one video. They're like, well, I'm going to contact this guy. It's like, no, they watch probably a few videos and then they probably read some of my content. They probably, there's probably something that makes them go, okay, yeah, this is who I'm going to contact. But you need to have all of that to really drive conversion. So that will wrap up episode number 8 of the Surfside PPC podcast. Again, join Surfside PPC Premium, get my Google Ads course, and then just subscribe to the podcast, YouTube channel, and get some free content. This will wrap up the episode. If you have any questions, of course, always send them in. And thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Surfside PPC podcast. Go to surfsideppc.com for management or consulting options, or to get my course or join Surfside PPC Premium through my YouTube channel, my school page, or my Patreon. Please subscribe.